My name is Ingrid Hicks. I want to share my incredible experience with you guys in short chapters. I hope you don't mind. Chapter 1. I then abruptly found myself in the maid's bedroom, looking down on her lounging on the bed. She was listening to the radio, unaware of what happened to me. Next, I was looking at my mom walking down the street several blocks away from the house, coming up on her bus stop. Time and distance had vanished for me. I could be anywhere at any time. It wasn't until that moment that I realized that I didn't possess a defined form. I could communicate with everything, and I was part of everything. It was like the wholeness and I were one. As I sank into an atmosphere of pure, bright light, I had the clear awareness that before I became human, I was a being made of pure light, just as I was now. While I was experiencing this blissful state of being, my mom suddenly sensed an intense feeling of dread. She turned around and ran back home as fast as she could. When she came into the house, she knew exactly where to go. On the patio, she found my oldest sister leaning into the tank, helplessly wailing to her, "Ingrid is in there and I can't reach her!" When my mom pulled my lifeless body out of the water, several minutes had passed. My lips were blue, my body cold, my skin pale, and I had no pulse. She was trained in CPR, so she pushed her fingers into my little chest and blew air into my lungs until I began choking and gurgling. I don't remember feeling anything when she was trying to revive me. By that time, I was far away. Suddenly, I was falling, as if I had jumped from the top of the tallest high-rise in the world, feeling as if I was being sucked back into my body like it was a vacuum. Then came the return of the intense, agonizing cold. I knew that I was back. When all of this happened to me, I was just a baby. I didn't have any preconceived notions about a near-death experience, NDE. At the time, I was too little even to understand that I had essentially died. All I knew was that I'd left my body and went to a place of indescribable well-being. However, this experience didn't feel unfamiliar to me. Somehow I comprehended that the current life that I was living was just a continuation of a very long existence. As I grew up and remembered my drowning, I could never get away from the question, how could I have seen my body lifeless if I was still alive? This experience made it clear to me that there was an existence beyond the body. Like the shell of a crab is an extension of the crab itself. Our body is also but a shell, and when it is not needed, it will fall away. Before I was 3, I was gifted with knowing that I had existed for a very long time. In fact, I have come and gone in different realms many more times, wearing many different shells. Chapter 2. The Beings of Light. For about a year after my young near-death experience, often while falling asleep, I started seeing colors, hearing sounds, and feeling motions like the ones I experienced during my drowning. Time would start to slow down, then abruptly speed up. It also felt as if for an instant I was being taken somewhere else. Then I'd experience a vacuum inside my belly and chest while being pulled back in. This feeling was disturbing indeed, but it came with a glimpse of a dimension I had been part of and wanted to go back to. I was completely unaware at the time that I was having out-of-body experiences. Over time, the length of these journeys increased, and the uncomfortable feeling of falling back into my body simply vanished. The dramatic changes in colors, sounds, and movements persisted, but they stopped bothering me. In fact, I looked forward to them, because they opened the door into a very serene place where I felt completely calm, free, and safe. Since my NDE, my health had deteriorated. I refused to eat and often felt upset. I would look at myself in the mirror, scratch my face, and pull my hair out while hysterically crying. Then I would run to my mom and scream out loud, "You don't understand. I am not this person. This is not me. This is not my name. I should not be here." Patiently, she would hug me, wipe away my tears, and murmur, "Don't say things like that. You are a smart and pretty girl. God has given you this life, and you should be thankful." Since I wasn't able to communicate my feelings in a way that people could understand, I became frustrated and increasingly isolated myself from the world. Most of the time, I just wanted to be left alone. My sisters were too young to understand what was happening, and my parents were too busy working and trying to survive day to day. So they did what they could to deal with a very challenging situation, falling into darkness. Thankfully, the help that I needed arrived in a most unexpected way. Right after my 4th birthday, during one of my vivid journeys, I was surrounded by star-like figures of pure light shining everywhere. They were of different sizes, and the colors were mostly white, silver, and gold. Suddenly, one of them, shining in pure gold, shaped itself into a human form and moved toward me until I sensed its touch. Feeling absolutely astonished, I said, "Wow, "You are a being of light." And then I snapped awake. Afterwards, I kept seeing the lights frequently while sleeping, so I became eager to go to bed. During some of the visits, many of them would be shaped as humans. Others remained shapeless bright light. It was chiefly the golden ones which adopted human form. On very rare occasions, blue and silver transformed. Regardless, I knew that each of them was a being. Each time that we were together, I sensed the deep feeling of joy that one can experience upon returning home after being homesick for a long time. I always felt more peaceful and healthier, and began interacting more with my family. I told them that I felt good because I was meeting beings of light while I slept. My parents felt relieved because I was sleeping well, feeling better and having good dreams. For a while I could only see these beings when I went to bed, but before long they started to appear anytime, anywhere. The first time I saw one with my eyes open, I stood in the shower, relaxing as the water washed over me. Suddenly, an intense and astonishing blue light flashed on before me, staying for a few seconds before it vanished. Even at 4 years old, I knew it was a being of light. I felt both thrilled and peaceful at the same time. They kept reappearing often, sometimes bringing with them the delightful fragrance of flowers. They didn't say or do anything in particular, but they were so stunning, and I felt so loved in their presence, that nothing more than their presence was needed. I first heard them talk after I threw a big temper tantrum. Since my NDE, I didn't identify with my name, and sometimes I felt bothered about people calling me Ingrid. That particular day, I got very angry at the maid for calling my name repeatedly. I turned to her and said, "Don't you understand that is not my name?" "Okay, so what is your name?" she replied, exasperated. "I don't need one," I answered, then got very mad and walked away crying. That night as I fell asleep, the bright golden being of light embraced me, and I heard a voice talking in a very loving and clear manner. "It is going to take a while for anyone around you to understand." "Understand what?" I asked, feeling confused and astounded. "Understand that your true self does not need a name. As you are discovering, names are not needed in the realm of the light." "You're right," I affirmed. In September of 1973, when I was nearly 3, I fell into a reservoir of water located on the patio of the house where I grew up in Bogota, Colombia. This cement tank, about 5 feet deep, was above ground and held 900 gallons of frigid water. Bogota is a high-altitude city that can be quite chilly in the morning, and the water in the reservoir might have been below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The purpose of this deep tank was to collect water for hand-washing clothes. So next to the tank there was a small flat surface for scrubbing. "All things that you are experiencing," the being continued, "and the ones that you will experience, are all gifts given to you to help yourself and others." "I don't understand. How am I helping anyone?" I asked. All I'd been hearing from people was that my behavior was not helping. "More than you imagine," it answered. "But don't worry, because eventually everything will be clear to you, and you will be able to communicate with everyone in a way that they will understand. For now, just stay calm, and don't mention this conversation to anyone because they are not ready to understand. Remember, we are here and you can talk to us. We are always listening." Still, it was hard for me to understand why nobody could understand me. Why did I feel so peaceful with the beings of light, but so uneasy when surrounded by humans? I couldn't understand why this was happening to me, to which the voice simply replied, "Because you are special, and you are beginning to know it." Then I said, "What do you mean that I'm special?" "Everyone is special, but they don't all know it yet. Just remember, you are not alone, and you will meet people to help you walk your path, so you do not need to worry." Then all was quiet. After receiving this message, I felt a lot calmer, and even though things were not still clear in my mind, I didn't need to ask any more questions. My tantrum stopped, and for a while I felt at peace. But the question of why me continued to resurface throughout the course of my life. Only when I was a little older could I understand that the beings of light had started to teach me faith and trust. All problems could be resolved if I'd just allow myself to rest calmly in the caring hands of divine guidance. But I was very resistant, and that resistance would bring a great deal of pain in my life. Early one morning after my parents had left for work, I and my 2 sisters, Liz and Lily, none of us over 3, were left at the house in the hands of the maid. She was a young lady who didn't pay much attention to us when my parents were not around. That morning, my oldest sister and I decided to play catch across the tank. The walls of the tank were high for us, so we grabbed some stools and managed to pull ourselves up. My sister sat comfortably on the flat surface next to the tank, and I kneeled precariously on the thin edge at the other side, so I had to make an extra effort to keep my balance. What happened next still is so vivid in my mind that I can remember every detail, like it happened yesterday. My sister and I were playing with two medium-sized balls, one dark yellow and the other green. The balls had the letters of the alphabet engraved on them, next to pictures of an animal or an object. We were throwing the balls to each other when the yellow ball slipped from my hands. I tried to grab it, but it rolled on the surface of the water. Then I lost my balance and fell into this dark and seemingly bottomless hole. My eyes locked onto the picture of a smiling white bunny painted on the ball as I was falling, and I can still feel the texture of the letters slipping through my fingers. The first feeling of the plunge was a shocking coldness. My body convulsed violently, and it felt like my chest was imploding. My desperation was intense, as I couldn't breathe. When I touched bottom, I instinctively thrust upward with my feet, but I rapidly sank again, and then my body became unresponsive. I could hear my sister screaming distantly from the surface, trying to reach me, but there wasn't anything she could do. She was too little to reach me. I could feel my heart pounding in my head like a bass drum. With eyes open, I stared hopelessly into the darkness. Then suddenly came a feeling of total relief. I didn't know why then, but I was at peace, and there was no anguish. My heart stopped pounding. Everything turned absolutely still. I was no longer cold and didn't feel like fighting anymore. My body simply became insubstantial. Then I noticed that a dim light, like a candle, had somehow begun glowing, just enough to illuminate my watery surrounding. I could see little bubbles, and then behind them I noticed a body suspended in the water. I remember looking curiously at its expressionless face and seeing the eyes staring, wide open. This was my own lifeless body, but I was neither surprised nor frightened to recognize it. Instead, I felt an immense joy and freedom, and soon the image of my body was replaced by the most beautiful flowers blooming from nowhere. And before I knew it, I was somehow being lifted and carried away by the flowers.